Have you ever had a client that initially made you nervous, and then by the time you were done working with them, they became one of your favorite people and your biggest raving fan? All right, well, hang with me because the story isn't what you think, but it is worth your time. I'm Katie Shive, host of AI After Hours, and if you're listening, this is a place where I talk about AI, personal branding, and what it all means. So let's get into this week's episode. Now, I recently worked with a client, and yes, you heard me right. He made me nervous. From the very first call, I was like, gah, not nervous for him specifically. He's a cool human, and you're going to learn that as I share this story, but nervous because most of the clients that I work with, they come to me relatively with a blank slate. Like they don't have a strong personal brand or they don't have anything established online, I should say. They themselves are a brand, but nothing is really documented. They don't have a strong social media presence. They don't have any weekly content rhythms. And so when we begin working together, it's largely like a blank canvas and we build something from essentially nothing. And this client was different. He came to me via referral from another client, which is always my favorite. And I started auditing him online and I was like, man, this guy has YouTube channel. He's got his Instagram dialed. He has his own website. Like anywhere you can just Google his name. And I'm like, he pops up. And not to mention, he's sort of one of the cool kids in a cool kid circle. And so I was like, he's got a lot of friends. So it just out the gate felt like the stakes were high to get this right. Now, another thing talking with this individual before we ever began diving into his book is he uses AI, like not dabbles in it, like he uses AI consistently and he uses AI on multiple platforms. So it kind of begs the question, can I actually help him? Like, will a brand book help somebody that has lots of content and is using AI, multiple platforms that already has strong, probably memory established? So, one, it was a good challenge, but two, I felt like, God, I can't mess this up. Okay, so here's the cool part. I know that even somebody that comes to me like that, there is always work that we can unpack. There's always magic that we can find. So I was game for the challenge. But I'm not going to lie, in the beginning, our first few conversations really were like, can you help? He was optimist and excited. But then we came to, okay, well, here's what my package is and here's what the investment is. And he was kind of like, oh, that's a lot. And I already have all of this. So we had that honest conversation. Ultimately, we decided, yes, let's work together. Let's really make this like level up. He is the type of personality that is like a 10 investing in his content strategy, really cares about that. So it was just a good alignment. All right. Now, here's where we started to get into the weeds and how I approached his brand book build differently than I have for other clients. Before I ever met with him, like for the initial interview, I went on to his social media channels and I started scrubbing his account and his content because I wanted to not just go off of the single interview that I would knew that I would have with him. I wanted to pull in other pieces of his content because that was contextually going to provide a deeper kind of pool of ideas and whatnot to pull from. So I went on to his YouTube channel. I found a couple interviews that he's been on for like long form podcast styles. So I pulled those transcripts. I incorporated that into my workflow. And then I also pulled some of his short form videos, you know, the educational ones where he's talking about X, Y, and Z. So I pulled just a handful. I didn't scrub his entire account by any means, but I pulled a couple selectively. I pulled those transcripts and then I incorporated that into my full build out. So, second to that, I had an interview with him. So, by the time I interviewed him, I felt like I was a pretty good study. I had a pretty good grasp on who he was as a person. Now, side note here, if you were going to be in acting and you were going to play a certain persona, the people that do it very well, they study the individual that they're going to be mimicking like they're the muse, right? And so that's essentially what I did with this individual. I did my homework. I read his website. I looked at his content. I was like, okay, I really need to feel who he is. What is his style? How does that come off? All right. So now this is where we enter the normal workflow for my brand book and how I work with my clients. So we did the interview, 90 minutes, had a really great conversation. No tears were shed in the making of that interview. And then I got to work. And again, this is where I started to feel nervous because I was like, this pressure is like, it was good. It felt really good, actually. So I dug into his brand book and started to build out all of the layers of his story. And here's where I started to notice something. I got to his LinkedIn account. Now, this individual represents a bank. So there's a certain persona that comes with working at a bank, and he works in a high net wealth area. So there's also a persona that comes with that. And so when I was initially talking with him, he's like, I have tattoos, and this is kind of how I dress, and this is my personality. And I was like, you're a cool person. Like, you're probably somebody that my husband and I would love to go to dinner with you and your wife and on a weekend, like outside of a professional work environment. And but then I was like, but I get to your LinkedIn and you're boring. Like I literally read his LinkedIn profile to him, and like I had to catch myself because I was reading, but it was long, and I literally said out loud blah blah blah, and he looks at me kind of bug eyes. He goes, I know, blah blah blah. And I was like, hang with me, because if I'm feeling that, other people reading this, it's the same thing. And so here's a cool thing that we discovered. His content was really strong on places like Instagram and YouTube, but then you get over to LinkedIn, and I was like, it's like you have an identity crisis. You're trying to digitally wear a suit and tie in your copy on LinkedIn, but if I met you in person, one, you would never use this verbiage. You'd never talk like this. It's very safe, it's very polished, it sounds very, perfect. But I'm like, one, that's not who you are. And two, that's not how you normally talk. So we need to fix this so that all of your content platforms sound like you. All right. So the question that he initially asked me was, what value can a brand book actually offer me? Especially because I use AI a lot and I have a content system. So here are the three things that I would tell him, that I did tell him, and that I would tell you. If you're listening and you're like, yeah, I fall in his camp, I use AI a lot. I have a brand, like I have content consistently. What could a documented brand book like do for me? The first one is it's insurance. Now, that word is not what I mean in the literal sense, but here is what I mean. Now, if you have listened to any of my previous episodes, you'll know that I frequently reference my ChatGPT saga. It's when I was upgrading from the business account to the pro account, and my account literally glitched mid-merge, and poof, 3 seconds, and my whole ChatGPT account incinerated before my eyes. I spent 2 days crying until I realized put your big girl pants on and you have to rebuild from scratch. So, what I knew then is that is the kind of turning point that I realized the brand book really was the money maker for people that want to go all in on their content. Like they need this brand book to help them like start getting a rhythm and building if they wanted to be serious about their content. Because what I learned is in 3 seconds, I lost everything. 2.5 years of history, chats, like my whole account just got cooked. So I would be devastated for anybody else to have that same experience. So by pulling your memory out, by putting it into an organized document that now is living external to your AI platforms, you can feed that into any of your platforms and you own that updated memory outside of relying on it working inside your accounts. So that's what I mean by insurance. The second thing is it provides cohesion. When I audited this guy's account, I looked at, some of the banners that were on his Facebook page versus his YouTube channel versus his LinkedIn. And I was like, they're all a little bit different. And the tone and the overall theme of the message was slightly different. It wasn't off. It wasn't enough to cause like an identity crisis, but it was just enough to be like, if I go here, I get this impression. And if I go here, I get that impression. What we want is a cohesive story across. What is your mission? What is your ethos? What is your why? And now, how do we convey that? Now, yes, every platform is going to be slightly serving a different purpose. So you don't need copy and paste verbatim, but the underlying message, the current underneath it, needs to be across the board. So it's cohesion. That's what we focused on. And then the third thing is depth. So, what you're using in ChatGPT as opposed to Claude, for example, you're having multiple conversations. You might be having an amazing conversation in ChatGPT that doesn't your AI accounts don't talk to each other. So, if you're using both for different things, now all of a sudden, like they're not seeing other conversations and whatnot. So you might have depth on one account and be shallow on another, what have you. So by pulling all of these things together and putting it into one comprehensive document, which is living, by the way, it lives on your Google Drive or wherever you store that. And now you're updating one account that can be attached and connected to multiple platforms. So now your depth in your brand book is being directed to multiple platforms and it's serving as a single source of truth. All right. So that's really what we accomplished with him. And here's the cool part. We delivered the brand book, or I delivered the brand book. Every time I do this, I get a little bit nervous because I put a lot of heart and soul into this. And it's a lot of pressure to build a document. I mean, these documents are like really in depth. To build a document that's like, hey, here is everything in writing that like describes you. And this is based off of a 90-minute conversation that I've had with you. So like it really feels like putting a mirror in front of somebody and you hope that you get it right. Anyways, so I'm going through the brand book review with him, and he's like super stoked. I could tell from his facial expression. But then we get to LinkedIn, and I was like, I saved the best for last. True story. This is by far my favorite LinkedIn about that I've written. I would put it on mine, except it's not about me, so it doesn't work. But I was like, I want to read you your LinkedIn bio. And I kind of told him the story of you're dressed like a tuxedo on LinkedIn and the cool beach kid on all of your other platforms, and we need to fix that. So I read him his LinkedIn update for his about, and he was like almost fighting back tears because it's like, this is so cool. So I knew at that point, yep, we had hit the jackpot. It worked. And the proof is in the review. We got off the call, and within 10 minutes, he's texting me, like, what's your Google link? I want to leave you a review. And he left me this review, and it was like, this is it lights my fire. It's the why I want to work with people, because it genuinely helps them. So he left me this amazing review and then ended up sending me a referral for a friend even later that day. So if you're listening, thank you. I so have loved working with you and love continuing to work with you. But if you're listening and you're like, dang, all she talks about is this single blasted brand book, it's my soapbox. It's the hill I'll die on. And it is the current thing, because here is the issue. AI is rapidly taking over everybody's content. And every day I scroll, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever feed, or even my inbox, and it's inundated with AI content. That's not bad, but most of it is soulless. You can tell that somebody just put 5 seconds into a prompt, they copy and pasted, it's not memorable. Most of it goes into my delete box or I scroll. So the whole goal of you being able to use AI to help power your content is that your AI tool needs to know who you are. And that is accomplished by building this document. Now, if you're listening, you do not have to work with me to build your brand document. That is not at all what this is about. But if you get one takeaway from today's episode, please put this in the back of your mind, put this on your to-do list, build this out. Now, if you're like my client who has a lot of content and you are like, one, I don't want to work with her, or that's an investment I can't afford right now, or I think I can do this myself, you absolutely can. So there's a couple prompts. What I would do is go into your ChatGPT account and Start asking it questions. Hey, based on everything you know about me, what is my voice tone? Help me build out my origin story. Help me build out a document that will describe who I am, what I'm about, the clients that I help, and help me put this in an external document. It's a great first starting point. All right, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions, send me a DM. I'm really active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Email, you know where to find me. But that's my AI After Hours this week, and I'll be in your inbox next week.